Check, check. Check, check. Check, check, mic 2. Check, check, mic 2. Hello and welcome to IndyStar's Pit Pass Live, coming to you live from Gasoline Alley ahead of the Indianapolis 500. I am Matt Glask. I'm sitting next to IndyStar Motorsports insider Nathan Brown, who we always say Doug Boles is the busiest man in May. I tend to say it's going to be this man, Nathan Brown. Nathan, how you doing?
I'm doing really, really well this morning. We've got an incredible atmosphere here. We're sitting here live in Gasoline Alley. We've got cars that are starting to fire up, making some last-minute changes, preparations. We've got lots of folks walking around here, certainly a lot more than last year, and it just feels finally, after 3 years of waiting, like we finally got a true Indy 500 back here at Speedway.
Yeah, we're expecting 300,000 people here. The weather is absolutely gorgeous. Couldn't ask for a better day, so we thank Mother Nature for that, because it's been an awful spring so far here in Indianapolis. But we have a loaded show today. Nathan has lined up some fantastic guests. We have Zak Brown, who will be joining us. The McLaren CEO will be joining us in just a few moments. Mario Andretti, Marcus Ericsson, a driver who will be in today's race. Michael Shank, owner of last year's Indy 500 winner. Ed Carpenter. Am I missing someone?
Mario Andretti.
Mario and Greg Doyle. I mean, we are going to have so
Boles.
many people here. And right now, we're going to start the show off with McLaren CEO Zak Brown.
Good, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
All right, we are back. We're joined live here in Gasoline Alley for Pit Pass Live. We've got McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown joining us here. Zak, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good to be here. I'm excited. Weather's perfect.
I know we only have you for a short period of time. You guys have another big race today in Monaco. Tips off right at 9. How are you splitting your responsibilities today?
This will be my last interview before I go sprint to the motorhome and open the double, triple top secret Dell laptop and dial in like I'm in pit lane, watch that, and then get ready for this race.
Last year, Monaco was held during qualifying weekend, so you could do maybe a little bit of both. Is it tough to not be able to be in two places at the same time?
Especially when it's the two biggest races of the year. So, yeah, last year, I think, it conflicts about 8 out of every 10 years, so this is not unusual. I felt it was important to be here, with this being the first year of us owning the racing team, and I think we have a chance to win. So I think we have a chance at a podium in Monaco, so I kind of went, well, which one to go to? First year, might be able to win. I'm going to go to Indy.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, McLaren Racing purchased a majority stake of Air McLaren SP. You guys, this is your guys' third season being aligned with Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson's team, Aero SP, as we might have known it before. What has McLaren brought to this team and this program in this first year of majority ownership that you guys feel like gives you guys a leg up this year?
Yeah, it was a great team, and that was the whole reason why we acquired it, that we felt had a lot more potential. If we could bring more resources in, we just announced we're doing a new race facility in Whitestown, 100,000 square foot. It's going to be a great building. We're expanding to 3 cars. I think Taylor Kyle, our president's doing an excellent job. We've made some hires. So, and then we've got a lot of technology back at McLaren and know-how. So I think it was already a team that knew how to win races and had won races, and we felt we could bring in some resources, talent, to just help take it to the next level.
As you mentioned, this new facility in Whitestown, when is that facility going to be up and running and ready, do you imagine?
We're hoping end of 23, but realistically it's probably early 24, knowing how the world is going right now with supply chain and things of that nature. So hopefully some point during the 24 season.
What does a new facility do for you guys here in IndyCar?
Size, our current facility is about a third of the size, and we want to expand to a third car, maybe even consider a fourth car. We need some more machinery, paint booths, employees, marketing department. So we were busting at the seams where we're currently at, and then if you build something, you can really build something for the future.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you feel like you guys have a great shot coming in today's race. You've got Pato Award starting 7th, his teammate Felix Rosenquist right next to him starting 8th. Juan Pablo Montoya, who's coming back and running for you guys again this year after last year, starting a little bit further back, but I know he's felt really comfortable with his race car, and he was even able to work his way up to the top 10 last year. We'll start with those two drivers you have up near the front. How much, especially at the start of the race, how much of a benefit is it to have Pato and Felix starting right next to each other?
Yeah, it's good. They're next to each other. They can help each other out. Obviously, the further you you start up, less cars you have to pass and worry about. So I think both those cars are capable of winning, and I think Juan's capable of winning. He's very happy with the car. We had a technical issue in qualifying, so that's why he's back there. He was really good in the final practice. He thinks he has a good race car, and he's very experienced, as Helio proved last year. So I think we have 3 cars in with a shout. The unfortunate part is I think there's about 15 other cars that are capable of winning, so it's anyone's race.
I think Pato and Felix, this is their highest start in terms of qualifying for the 500 in their short careers so far, through practice and qualifying leading up to today's race. What have you seen from those 2 young guys in particular that you feel like might turn into a potential win today?
Well, they've been fast all month. They've been very happy with the car. They've just been dialing it in. They've been good in every session. So I think they're confident and they feel they've got a good race car underneath them. And now we need to execute on strategy, pit stops, and have a little bit of luck fall our way, because there's an element of that here around the 500. And let's see where we are with 20 laps to go.
You're an American racing fan first. You were a driver for a little while. You grew up in the United States. I know you spend most of your time now in the UK, but do you have a sense of what winning this race as a team owner would mean to you and do for this team?
It would mean everything to me. I mean, I grew up in Indianapolis for about 20 years of my when I was done racing, and then started my company. So Indianapolis feels like home to me. I grew up a young kid turning on, the Indy 500, watching Johnny Rutherford and Rick Mears and these legends. So this is just such a special place to be.
Just to kind of close things out, it's the first time that we've had a normal feeling race here since 2019. I know it's still early. It's about 8:45 in the morning. We've still got 4 hours until the green flag. But do you even have a sense yet of what this race atmosphere and the fans here feel like compared to the last couple years that we've had here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fans here. It's awesome. Yeah, I've been coming to this race for, 20 years, so I have an appreciation of its size and scale, but the enthusiasm's awesome. And, we've now been here a few times under the McLaren umbrella. Awesome with Fernando the first time around, a total disaster the second time around. So I've already felt the highs and lows of Indianapolis, and just hope we're there at the end today.
Zach, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you need to get back to the Condor and tune into Monaco, but we appreciate it, and best of luck to you guys the rest of today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so that first guest right out of the way,
Yeah.
Zak Brown of McLaren. So you want to just talk a little bit about the McLaren drivers, Pato Award, Felix Rosenqvist starting up near the front. First of all, Pato Award's TikTok the other day, absolutely hilarious.
Oh my God.
Absolutely hilarious.
I don't know that we have enough time in the show to get through that TikTok. That was fabulous. Pato is such a joy to have in this series. He's an incredible race car driver. He won the first time this season back at Barbara Motorsports Park. He had a little bit of a rocky start so far this year. He was having some contract, let's say, issues, discussions behind the scenes that I think had, maybe had him lose a little bit of his focus. But they announced 2 days ago now, so on Carb Day, that he has reached a new deal with McLaren Racing. It goes through 2025, so he is now going to be here for this season. He's already been here 2 years before, and he will be here for 3 more with this race team. He is the cornerstone of this team. He won a couple races last year, and I would expect him to win at least 1, maybe 2 more, and certainly vie for a championship this year. You've got Felix Rosenqvist, who some believe in this paddock may be fighting for his job. This is his second year with Air McLaren SP. He's really, I don't know, you would say maybe he's underperformed. He's certainly struggled to get used to this race car. He's moving over from a Honda team to a Chevy team and has struggled last year in qualifying, and with such a tight field was just really tough to be able to make up too many positions consistently and not let crashes or simple bad luck ruin his races. He's come into this year and qualified much better, but just has not been able to get the performance on race day that they are looking for. So I think a good Indy 500, potentially even a win here like we saw for Simon Pagenaud, helps seal another deal with Team Penske. We could very well see something like that for Felix today.
We talked about the fans being back and this being the first 500 really back in full force in 3 years. But there are so many storylines for this race in particular. You got Helio going for number 5. You've got Jimmie Johnson making his debut here. You got Colton Herta, who's the young up-and-coming American star, getting in a big crash on Friday now, in a backup car. There are so many storylines. What is like the one thing? Obviously, Helio is he the top storyline, or is Jimmie Johnson?
I mean, it's tough. I almost feel like Jimmie might be the story, only because Helio is starting so far back in 27th. We saw him in the Fast 9 last year in his first race with Marcus Shank Racing, and he flew a little bit under the radar, I would say. Ganassi had been so strong all month. Scott Dixon took the pole. You had some really strong Ed Carpenter racing cars up there, and Helio just kind of put his car in the right position last year and was able to pounce with about 30 laps to go. He traded the lead back and forth over those final 10 laps with Alex Palou, and then was able to use traffic to his advantage and held off a guy who was just running in the Indy 500 for the second time in his career. You're talking about Jimmie. Jimmie's in a little bit similar situation, I would say. I don't know that he's maybe a favorite, but he's a guy that's starting high enough and has a ton of oval racing experience, even though this is his first 500. Last year, Helio had run 20 or more. I think there's maybe some similarities there where if they can hang around into the final 50 laps or so, I think Jimmie's got a great shot at this race. He showed at Texas in his first oval race a couple months back that he's able to make some jumps late in the race. He knows how to use this car, even though he's not been as strong on road and street courses. He knows how to use this car. He knows how to use ovals. He knows how to pass, pull them off going into corners. He knows how to draft. He knows how important fuel saving is for a 500-mile race like this. So I give Jimmie a great shot. Now, does he have as good a shot as his teammates Scott Dixon and Alex Palou that are starting on the front row? I would say no. But if Jimmie can hang around, maybe one of those two guys up toward the front, his Ganassi teammates fall off. Would love to see a Scott Dixon-Jimmie Johnson duel here at the end. That would be incredible.
Well, if Jimmie Johnson were to win, he would just be the third person to win the Indianapolis 500 and the Daytona 500, joining Mario Andretti and A.J. Foyt. So not bad company to be kept in.
Certainly not. If we talk about the triple crown of racing, that typically includes winning the 500, winning the Le Mans 24 hours, and then, depending on who you talk to, either winning in Monaco or winning a Formula One championship. Jimmie would, let's say, have the best American motorsports, I would say, double in terms of the 500 at Daytona, the 500 here. Those are the two biggest races that we run in this country on any given year. And the fact that only 3 people have done that, it's a little surprising. We've heard a lot about that. I was maybe a little surprised that back in the 60s and 70s when we saw a lot more crossover that no one else had done that, but incredibly big deal, and I know how much it would mean to Jimmie. The fact that he would do it at this point in his career, in his late 40s, and in his first 500 would just be incredible, and I think we would see this place and the motorsports community at large just really erupt.
How has he really adjusted to IndyCar coming from NASCAR? What has he said are the major differences? I know, like a few years ago, he was dipping his toe in the water that maybe I'll do Indy, and now he's all in. So what has the transition been like for him? What has he said has been like the main difference, besides the fact that you're obviously going faster in an IndyCar than you are in NASCAR?
I mean, these road and street course races are so different from a NASCAR race that we've seen. We've seen NASCAR in the Cup Series add a few more road course races over these last couple years. I feel like they're somewhere around the 6 to 9 range here for a regular season, but he doesn't have a whole lot of experience, turning left and turning right, dealing with different types of corners, different lengths of straightaways, and even if you run in those races, those are still just so incredibly different from the speed, the preciseness that you have to have in the braking zones, the lateral load that these Indy cars have, the pickup that they have coming onto a straight, coming out of a turn. And Jimmie, I would say, is maybe a little bit of a perfectionist, and he is always right there on the edge in those road and street course races. He wants to do great, and I think, I don't know, maybe he's a victim of the expectations that he sets out for himself, and we just haven't seen the level of performance that I know he would love to have in these races, in part because this field is just so incredibly tight. He can be just, maybe a half second off the guys that are running in the front pack, and that at best might lead to a 15th place finish, and maybe that's even on a perfect day, and we just haven't seen too many perfect days from Jimmie Johnson in a road and street course race. That being said, an oval is much more similar. He's won on this track 4 times. Yes, the speed is different. Yes, the braking zones are different. Yes, the way that the car interacts with the turns is a little bit different, but he knows that each of these 4 corners, even though they look the same to the naked eye, are very different. You have to use your tools differently. You have to maybe run just a hair of a bit different line in every single one. You have to be hyper-focused for 2.5 to 3 hours, even just driving the car, and let your folks in the pits run your strategy. He's run, there's some stat out there, and I don't exactly know what it was, but I believe he has won certainly more oval races, and I believe more 500-mile races than anyone in this field, and it might even be to the level of anyone in this field combined, simply because it's been a long time since we've seen 500-mile races be a regular thing outside the 500 in IndyCar. So yes, these cars are different, but Jimmie has lots of experience he can use from his 20 years in NASCAR, and unless we see a fumble in the pits or he gets caught up in an accident either that he causes or that someone around him causes, I think he could definitely be a factor here toward the end of the race.
All right, talking about another newcomer and someone who might cause the crash, if you ask some other people in the paddock, Romain Grosjean, coming from F1. This is his first Indianapolis 500. What are the expectations for him? I know he's ruffled a few feathers with some of his driving, and then on Friday I think he had an incident with David Malukas. Is that right?
He was not the one in Malukas, but
okay.
It was on Monday. Grosjean was running low through turn 1. Dalton Kellett was trying to make a pass on the outside there in that practice following the qualifying weekend that we had. They were running essentially neck and neck at the yard of bricks. Dalton was trying to make an outside pass, got into the start of the corner and realized he wasn't going to be able to make it, so he backed off. Grosjean held his line, which, I don't know. You talk to some people in the paddock and you'll get some different answers, but I think both of those guys were at fault, but it certainly was a shame to see a crash like that in a practice that doesn't necessarily matter. But Grosjean is a, no buts about it type of guy. He is, as you mentioned, running the 500 for the first time. He's just running his 3rd oval race, and his race earlier this year at Texas.
Is he kind of like a Takuma Sato that he'll go for it at all times? Is that?
I think that's a great comparison. You know, I was thinking over these last couple days about how to describe to someone Romain Grosjean and his attitude coming into this race. I think this is a paddock where, yes, on the racetrack, these guys are all competing with each other, but at the same time, I think there's a friendship and a trust and a camaraderie about a lot of these drivers, probably most of these drivers in this paddock. I would say that Grosjean is able to have a lot of those, grab a beer after the race type moments with some guys in this paddock, but he's certainly maybe not as beloved as some other newcomers in this paddock. Certainly not Jimmie Johnson, as you might say. I don't know that there's a single person in this paddock that could say a single thing wrong about Jimmie, and Grosjean just holds himself to a bit of a different manner about him. He's spent a decade in Formula One where you don't really make friends with guys.
They're all competing for everyone's job, it seems like, every 2 years.
Yes, and I would argue maybe just even that much more on the line because of so much money involved. There's so much of a discrepancy in between the technology, so that competition with your teammate is that much more important, because that's the only guy in that series that has the exact same equipment and theoretically has the exact same capability as you. So it's a bit more cutthroat than I would think we would see in IndyCar. He's got a European upbringing that I think in itself is just a little bit of a different way to go racing. He's got a little bit of a different way that he was brought into racing. So I personally have loved my time with Romain. I think he's a very complex character. But he certainly brings a little bit of a different attitude. He's not willing to give a single inch, even in practice, where I think some other guys say in that incident with Dalton, might have backed off, might have known, I'm going to let him, learn his little bit there, get his pass in, and we'll move on in practice. And Grosjean wants to treat every single second that he's in a car for Andretti as preparation for his first Indy 500. And it's important to note, he's their top qualifier in this race by far. All of their other drivers outside of Grosjean qualified 20th or worse in this race. He was the only guy that got into the fast 12. He's starting 9th in this race. So I know we might be able to see some passing see some guys make some jumps from the back, but in terms of a guy that has a decent shot to win this race, for better or for worse, this rookie for Andretti, I think, has their best shot, and so they got to put a lot of chips in on him.
You mentioned the possibility of, or the hope of maybe seeing a Dixon-Johnson shootout for Chip Ganassi. Chip Ganassi Racing hasn't won the Indianapolis 500 in 10 years. That's kind of a surprising set. I mentioned that to Scott Horner, one of our sports producers, earlier today, and he's like, really? And it's like, yeah, I read it in one of Nathan's stories, so it must be true. Is that kind of a stat that surprised you, considering how much success they have had here in their history?
It's very weird. In some ways, you could compare it to the drought that Andretti Autosport has had in championships. Their last championship came with Ryan Hunter-Reay, funny enough, also in 2012. But I think,
where is Ryan Hunter-Reay right now?
He is coaching, I believe is the correct term, for Callum Ilott, Juncos Hollinger Racing rookie this year, who has done a great job in getting the only single car full-time team in this series up to speed. It's been great to see Ryan around here. He spent some time on the Peacock practice shows, I believe in the first week. Sounds like a guy who is really content at where he is in life. I'm sure he'd love to be in one of these race cars.
Or is he?
I don't know. He made it no secret that he was approached by several teams. I mean, frankly, wouldn't have been surprised if Juncos would have been one of those teams for some interest to run a car this year. He is just not in a position in life where he wants to run in this race, which requires so much preparation, so much time, putting so much on the line in terms from a health standpoint, to go out and run in the middle of the pack. Callum has been a strong guy in this race. Ryan obviously has a lot more of experience, but it would, frankly, take, a little bit of a miracle, you might say, for Ryan if he was in this race running with, say, Juncos, for example, to be able to win. We saw a team like Meyer Shank Racing last year, who won its first race ever in IndyCar in the Indianapolis 500, but MSR has a technical partnership with Andretti. Juncos does not have such an endeavor. So I think you could potentially see him in an extra car with another potential, top running team in these next couple years. He's only a little bit over 40, so as we saw last year,
that's a young person right
yes.
there at 40.
Yes.
Young.
You saw a guy like Helio come in with a brand new team who has lots of experience here last year and won the race. So I don't know that it has to be over for Ryan. He announced a couple weeks back that he's going to be running a sports car program with Chip Ganassi Racing as they ramp up for the future of sports cars here in America. So he's certainly not done racing, and I hope, and I know there are lots of fans hope here that Captain America still will have another shot or two at this 500.
I'm so sorry for the tangent. I went off. We just talked 10 minutes about a guy who's not in this race, so I apologize for that.
It's all right.
But, all right, so who else? I'm reading some of your stuff, and by the way, if you don't subscribe to the Indy Star, you should if you're a fan of the month of May, because no one has been busier than Nathan. I think he's written about 375 stories so far this month. So be sure to go to IndyStar.com to get a lot of your pre-race stuff read. But there's been so much. Has there been any one story you've written this May that really sticks out to you? That if our audience only has one time to read something, that they should go track down before the race starts.
Sure. So I think there's a couple. I'll start with Helio, who we've only talked about a little bit so far. I got a little bit of time to spend with Helio out when we were racing at Barber Motorsports Park at the very beginning of the month. We sat in his motorhome for more than a half an hour. We talked about racing. Maybe the coolest part of the start of that interview is that he had last year's front page of the Monday edition from the Indy Star last year when he won this race. He had the full paper there out in his motor coach. It was really cool to see that he...
Who says print is dead?
I know, exactly. When you've got a four-time winner of this race that's holding on to a newspaper copy for 340-some days, it was really, really cool to see. But the thing that I learned in talking to Helio and talking to the folks around him is that I think winning this one as much as the others meant when he was with Team Penske in 2001, 2002, and 2009. I think this one meant a little bit more, maybe some because it was a little bit unexpected, but also the history that came with it. We all know that was the race that brought him even with Rick Mears, AJ Foyt.
You going to talk over the bagpipes?
We certainly can try. Rick Mears, AJ Foyt, and Al Unser Sr. We hadn't seen a feat like that in 30 years in this race, so it's cool to see. But just the lead up over these last couple weeks, Helio got a little bit emotional. We were there for an unveiling of Castroneves Drive here at IMS. It's where the 4th Street used to be, the intersection of Holman Drive, which is kind of the main artery.
Castroneves Drive doesn't really roll off the tongue. I would have
No,
gone like Elio Way.
Elio Way,
Elio
or
Way sounds a lot better than Castroneves Drive.
Elio Avenue, maybe. Might have.
No, Elio Way. I just told you what I want it to be.
But I mean, I think Drive is cool to have. I mean, Drive for 5 is their motto.
Okay, I get the drive aspect.
So I think
of it.
there's maybe something there, but
that's fair.
The important part of that story was just the emotions that are running through Helio both last year and this year that folks around him haven't necessarily seen. Doug Boles in particular, who spent a lot of time with Helio in the aftermath of last year's race, both in organizing the airing and taping of the club that they had that they taped last July, that included getting together all 4 four-time winners. He just, I think, has an even deeper appreciation of what he accomplished last year versus those other wins, and some of these moments behind the scenes brought him to tears, which, as much as emotion as we saw from Helio winning the 500, a thing like a street sign unveiling, or seeing his face on the cover of the Indy 500 program for this year, which no other previous winner in the 105 runnings of this race previously had before. He got choked up. He had to hold back some tears, and has been a really fun ride to see how he has enjoyed this last year. Certainly, we don't know if there's another one of these coming. If he did, he would sit alone by himself. He's the only person that's won 5 editions of this race. I know the 300,000 plus fans here would certainly love to see that.
Would there be a more popular winner than Helio today?
I can't imagine. The others that come.
Like those old guys who've won 4 that are just like, don't win this race.
I mean, those guys. Rick Mears, in particular.
They're not like the Dolphins popping the cork every time a team loses.
I don't think so. The 2 that are still alive, Rick Mears has said countless times. He's joked about, maybe how lonely Helio might feel with just one person in the spotlight. But I think we all know Helio loves the spotlight. I think he would embrace that.
You mean Dancing with the Stars?
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Win that race. I think it would mean a lot to him. When you talk about folks that winning this race, this place would just erupt for. Connor Daly is one that comes to mind. Ed Carpenter, I think, is another one. I think folks would love to see Tony Kanaan win another time here in this race. But I think Helio is a person that would just set this place on fire, and it certainly would be fitting to have 300,000 plus fans here and have the biggest, arguably, I would say the biggest piece of history we have ever seen in this race happen today. And on that note, perfect timing.
Yeah, and speaking of winning Indianapolis 500s, our next guest is Michael Shank, who was the team owner of Helio Castroneves' car last year and won his first Indianapolis 500 as a race car owner. So I'm going to pass off to Mr. Shank.
So awesome to be able to have Mike on the show with us last year. He came on last year, and we were lucky to be able to have him on. But I don't know that we knew what this day was leading to for you last year. Can you tell us a little bit about what May 30th, 2021 was like for you as an IndyCar owner, as a fan of this race, and just, frankly, a human being that had accomplished probably the biggest thing in your racing life?
I've talked about this a little bit, but imagine growing up as a kid with whatever sport you thought was the best, whether it's Indy Stick and Ball Sport or Churchill Downs or Augusta or Fenway Park. Imagine actually being able to realize that dream and it all really happened in real time in real life. And the overwhelming part of it and the goosebumps are real and just total out-of-body experience, 100%.
I think my favorite image, at least my favorite video clip, I think, from the aftermath of that race, you're sprinting out through pit lane, you're straddling the break in between pit lane and the racetrack.
Yeah.
Helio is coming by, I think, finishing his celebration lap. What can you even begin to describe the emotions? Like, did you realize what you were doing there and how iconic that photograph might be a year later?
I really didn't. I don't even really remember doing it. I was just so, it sounds cheesy, but I was just overwhelmed. I was a stress relief. It was it's out of body a little bit, which is, it really sounds weird saying that, but I just did it, just total jubilation, total happiness, perfect happiness.
You and your wife, Mary Beth is her name, right?
Mary Beth,
She's, you guys have built this program literally from the bottom up. You've been in racing for a long time, but only been in IndyCar racing for less than 10 years now. You've got Jim Meyer on your program, who joined you a few years back.
Right.
Been picking up some more sponsors. You have your technical partnership with Andretti Autosport. What has this past year been like in terms of building the foundation and the future for this IndyCar team, and frankly, even just Meyer Shank Racing at large? You guys race in other places as well.
Well, what I can tell you, it was a lot easier by winning this race. And by the way, we won the Rolex 24 in January with Simon and Helio and 2 other drivers also. I mean, it made that, it made everything easier and better, which means it starts with respect and understanding that we can get the job done on every level. Well, whether it's in the car, in the boardrooms, with hospitality guests, whatever it is, we've grown our partnership base probably 50% or 60% since last year. And we're trying to find companies that have similar like-mindedness, I guess you'd say, and sensibilities. I'm very Midwest, and so is Jim. And we like to have a lot of fun, but we also like to provide a lot of value.
I was going to say, how soon did those prospective sponsor calls start flowing in after May 30th last year?
Right away. People committed to, the first thing we needed to do was get the funding and put Helio in the car for all season. And that was our goal. And Jim and I accomplished that probably within a month of the victory, right? So that we could plan for this season right now. So Helio is just a special guy. He can finish anywhere on the grid, and the people just love him. He's excellent with our sponsors, and he's a true icon of our sport, in my opinion.
Being able to bring Helio back full-time this year, I know it's been a little bit of an adjustment for him. He hasn't been running more than maybe even one rotor street course race since 2017. The way that he's been able to get up to speed a little bit here and there, he's had some strong qualifying runs, some great races so far, but the ability to pair him with someone like Simon Pagenaud, who has been a front runner in this sport for close to a decade now. The fact that they were teammates before at Team Penske, you can work off of the synergy and the friendship and the relationship that those two guys had built together. How have you seen that impact your team over the last couple months as they've been working on track together?
Well, you actually said it. They're friends first. Off the track, friends. On the track, they want to beat each other, but they work really well together, and I genuinely believe if one can't win, they hope the other does. So it starts with a basis of trust that whatever they say to each other is believable and the truth. And it was one of the reasons when Jim Meyer and I looked at who we're going to bring in. Simon, we knew where he stood with Helio anyways, right? And it was the right choice for us. Simon just finished P2 in the GP with a very good calculated drive in the wet and bad conditions a couple weeks ago now. And man, listen, we're right in the gut of the season now. We do the 500 today, and then we load up tomorrow, and all the rigs head to Detroit to Road America, and then we get a weekend off. So it's a really tough part of the season, but having those two guys, they know all the tracks, even though Helio hadn't been there for a while. They get on the simulators here in Indianapolis for Honda, and Helio's getting reacclimated to it. These cars are tough to drive. In road course trim, they're really, really tough. So we just keep working on it, and we'll see what happens today. Could be a good day. As
you said, I know the build-up to this race has maybe been a little bit busier, a little bit more pressure on you. I talked to you on Sunday in the garages, and it was a day that you guys would have loved to be on track, participating in the Fast 12 like Helio was last year in the Fast 9. Had, like so many teams did, frankly, just a little bit of a tough day in the unpredictable conditions that we had in qualifying, whether it be weather, the way the fast lane and the slow lane worked, where you drew your first run Well, I guess the point that I'm trying to make, I know you spoke about a meeting that you had Sunday morning that Helio called for, where he just kind of wanted to get everyone back on the same page, figure out what happened there and how you guys could improve upon it. What have you guys learned, and what kind of steps have you taken in this last week to hopefully be able to challenge for this race from 27th and 16th?
Well, again, it's not always roses, right? We did win this race last year, but there are times things get tough, and we had a tough time in qualifying, and we had some things happen that just weren't ideal. Our draws on both cars were really poor, which is not helping. That's hurting. When Simon qualified, it was peaked. It literally dropped 2 degrees when his run was done. So, there's not a lot we can do about that. So the processes, how we generate speed, how can we do it when the track goes to heck on us, So it was good. We have to get together and talk about the good, and we got to talk about the bad. What can we do to be better? How can we fix that? And more importantly, we're already talking about qualifying for next year. What are we going to do different? What can we do in every aspect?
We've heard, in part because of how sunny it is today, as folks can see around us, the high temperatures that we are expecting later today that are going to get in and past 80 degrees.
Yep.
I know we saw a pretty racy race that Helio was able to have last year with a decent amount of passing at the front. From talking to team owners, from talking to drivers, I don't know that we expect to see something quite like last year's race this year. How can you get a guy up to the front from 16th and 27th to potentially be able to vie for another one?
Well, you got to have early movement. We need to get them both going north as early as we can, and then it'll settle into a fuel race for a while. Take opportunity when you have it, and when the pit cycle starts is when you can gain some position or lose. But more importantly, as the track temp comes up, the balance shifts. And do we keep up with it with the balance shift? And because we have this new sealer on the track, and we have we're predicting 120, 125, bright sun, no shade, it's going to be a problem for everybody. So who can tune their car in real time in pit stops, the last 2 stops maybe-ish? If we're up in the top 10 and our cars can be where I think they can be, we have an opportunity to score.
I know it wasn't with you guys last year, but the work that Simon did to move from 26th to 3rd ultimately last year, I believe he was just about a half second off of that fight at the finish between Helio and Palou. I think Helio has even said that Simon was the guy that he was actually worried about the most. It was right there in his rearview mirror. I know it wasn't with you guys, but does the experience of that at this track so recently and the the same car, the same components and everything, can you take a little bit from his experience there last year and what he did?
We dissected it completely, Simon and the team and the engineers. We know exactly how and why and what they did, how they advanced, how they didn't at first and then did at the end. We understand all that. We know why it happened, so we're ahead of that. I think we're ahead of that right now. You never know until we get out there on the front straight and we get all the nerves out, but we dissect all those situations and try to understand what it took. Not easy. I mean, really not easy, especially in Helio's position, but very possible.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us. We hope we bring you some good luck like we did maybe
I
last
hope so.
year. And
we'll come and talk about it if it
Sounds good. We'll hope to have you on next year and maybe be talking about Indy 500 win number 2.
That'd be great.
That's Mike Shank, the team co-owner of Meyer Shank Racing. His cars, again, Simon Pagenaud starting 16th. Helio Castroneves starting much farther back, 27th. But there's both guys that have won this race, and there's certainly both guys that could go out and surprise us and win one today.
Yeah, all right, so we've talked about Helio, we've talked about the Ganassis, we've talked about Romain Grosjean, Jimmie Johnson. Let's talk about Colton Herta, because this is the guy that, is the next great hope for American open-wheel driving, right? The guy that people think is going to be maybe F1 down the line, potentially. So the crash he had on Friday, what does that do for him? He was already starting back in the field because of qualifying, but now he's in a backup car. What does that do for him and his chances of winning this race?
Yeah, so I was talking to Michael Andretti in the garages, just a few minutes after Colton had been released from the infield care center. We knew that physically he was okay, although we had to wait until midday yesterday to get the official confirmation that he had been cleared to race from the IndyCar medical team. But as long as Colton was okay, certainly the biggest impact of that crash is the fact that they've got to put a backup car in this race that has not run a single lap on this track all month. Obviously,
Oh,
Andretti,
that's no problem, right? Yeah.
obviously Andretti Autosport holds itself to high esteem in what they can do around this track. They've been racing here for years. They've had recent winners like Alexander Rossi in 2016, Ryan Hunter-Reay in 2014, Takuma Sato in 2017. But there's so much massaging to these cars that goes through the 20 or more hours that they have in practice in race trim specifically to get that car to where it needs to go. So they have all the data to be able to put Colton's car and that identical setup, but there's just something to getting the parts in the car a little bit gently used and maybe into an optimal position, knowing for a fact that everything that's supposed to be connected underneath the carbon fiber body of this car is connected right and is going to react right when this car gets fired up here in a few hours. There's just got to be a little bit of a worry and an uneasiness that that something goes wrong when he gets out there. And we saw from Colton his first 500 in 2019 starts pretty high up there. Doesn't, I believe, complete a single competitive lap because his car failed him early in the race, and we just have to hope that something like that doesn't happen here again. Now to switch gears, talking about a driver with Formula One hopes that's starting in the back of the field. We've got a guy that's a front runner who has run Formula One, has now made a home for himself in IndyCar. This is his third year with Chip Ganassi Racing. Thanks so much for joining us. Marcus Ericsson, the driver of the number 8 Husky Chocolate Chip Ganassi Racing Honda. How are you feeling on race day morning?
I'm feeling great. It's the best day of the year for us, so obviously starting up front as well. We've had a really good month and feeling confident as a team and personally as well. So I'm super excited. Had a good night's sleep until the cannon went off at 6 a.m. So no, it's just amazing to be here and to see so much fans here already. It's just incredible.
You came here 4 years ago, and oval racing was certainly incredibly foreign to you, and you've picked it up very quickly. I know winning on an oval is still the one place that you've yet to do so, but you picked up 2 race wins last year. You won on the streets of Detroit, the streets of Nashville. You've had some incredibly strong, incredibly consistent performances on road courses as well. And we saw you earlier in the year at Texas, the only oval race that we've had so far this year, finish third, I believe. So I know they're very different tracks, and it's been several months since we've been there. But did you have a sense back there on March 20th when we finished that race, you were in talking to us in the media center at Texas, that you guys were starting to build, particularly on your number 8 car, a really strong oval program that would benefit you guys in May?
Yeah, I believe so. We sort of sat down this off season and looked at different areas. Obviously last year was definitely a breakthrough year for me and for the 8 car team, and but we felt, looking at the stats from last year, it was definitely the ovals that was our weak point, and that was an area we tried to focus on in the off season. I watched a lot of videos and talked to Dario a lot about the oval racing and try and learn a lot from Scott and see sort of how he races on the ovals. And that Texas result and performance for me was a big boost for me to see that I've taken steps there and that I could deliver a good result. And that confidence and sort of momentum is something I brought into the month of May, and I feel like that's helped me be strong all month, because that's been the case. We've been fast every single session, had a really good qualifying weekend, and starting up front now in the race. So it's definitely been an area that we've improved, and I'm just super excited to see if that's going to pay off today as well.
I know you worked your way into the Fast 9 a year ago, if I remember correctly. So you were starting pretty well last year. You'll start 5th later on this afternoon in today's race. Is there a different feeling that you have coming into today, having started up here in the front, having just one more 500 underneath your belt, and maybe a little bit more familiarity with this team and the strong team behind you that you guys have obviously proven? You guys got 4 cars starting in the Fast 6. Your fifth best qualifying car, Jimmie Johnson, is in 12th. Would you say you feel even better this year compared to last year?
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, like I said, it's my 4th year now in the 500, and it's been a progress. You learn more and more every year, and I feel for the first time probably that I'm ready to win it. You know, I have the car, the team, and the driving skills to do it. Obviously, it's going to be a long race. There's a lot of things that's going to happen throughout the race, but I definitely feel like we have all the ingredients to do it. Then, you know, the track picks its winner, everyone says, so let's see if that's us today, but we definitely have the opportunity to do it, and I've learned a lot of stuff over the last couple of times I've been here, so I'm very, very much looking forward to trying to use that to my advantage today in the race.
Every race you come into in IndyCar, you are facing 3 of the top drivers that are your own teammates in Chip Ganassi Racing. You have 4 today. Can you tell us a little bit about what maybe the camaraderie in the garage and then the inter-team battles are like that you guys have today? Ultimately, if you win this race, you're going to have to beat the 2 guys from the front row on your own team, Dixon on the pole, Alex Palou, the defending championship winner, starting second. What battles do you have to face maybe internally or with your team to try to beat guys like that who have, you know, the same engineering, the same technology, and the same strengths behind their own cars?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's been great to be part of the team this month. You know, 5 cars, just to put 5 cars on the grid is a achievement, I think, for this race. But to put 5 cars, 4 of us, like you said, in the Fast 6, Jimmie not far away from it. It's been very impressive to see that from sort of behind the scenes. And I think today as well, you know, my biggest competitors for the win is my teammates. You know, that's what I feel like. You know, Scott and Alex going to be super strong. TK is always strong here, and he will be a factor. And I think Jimmie can win it as well. You know, he's a bit less experienced in IndyCar, but if it's something he knows how to do, it's to win races on ovals. So I definitely feel like my biggest competitors out there today is going to be my teammates.
What have you seen? Is there a single thing or maybe a couple things, and whether it's on track or off track, is there something that Jimmie has done as a rookie in this race over the last couple weeks that has stood out to you or impressed you the most?
I think we've talked about that even on the road and street courses. The way he works, his work ethic is very impressive. He's very much into the details. He's asking a lot of questions. And I think on the ovals, we saw straight away in Texas that he's extremely good at feeling the car on the oval. He's extremely good at giving feedback on the car in very small details, and that's something he's been bringing, you know, to all of us this month with those small details in the way the car feels. And I think he's added definitely to the whole program this month of May. So it's been a pleasure to be teammates with him.
One of the things that I love, I would say probably every single IndyCar race we go to, I see a block of Swedish fans that are cheering you on, waving the flag, wearing the colors, whether it's the colors of Sweden or your Husky chocolate red colors. I just think it's a really awesome thing that we have fans, whether they live here in the U.S. or they come from Sweden and come to IndyCar races. What do you make of this vibrant, passionate fan following that you and probably to the same extent your countryman Felix Rosenqvist have been able to build here in IndyCar?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you say, it's pretty much every race. Obviously, the last 2 years have been tough with COVID, but in 2019 and this year so far, it's been Swedish fans in every race, and they are all very proud, bringing the Swedish flags and making sure you can notice them in the grandstands or autograph sessions and so on. So it means a lot to me. Already when I was in Formula One, I had a great following of Swedish fans, and I've been really happy to see that they've also been following me and Felix here in the IndyCar series. And I know this weekend there's so many Swedish fans that have been flying in from Sweden for this particular race, and already met a lot of them. I went to a dinner on Thursday night, surprising a group of fans. I think it was 30 Swedish fans that was just meeting outside the track in a restaurant in Speedway. And they're so enthusiastic and excited to see me and Felix running up front today. So it's great to have that support, and hopefully we can give them something good to share about later today.
I'll leave you with this last one, and then we'll let you get going back to the garage. But I know you probably maybe haven't been able to go back to Sweden as much as you mentioned because of the pandemic and everything that we've been going through these last couple of years. But when you have been able to, or when you've communicated with friends and family back home, do you get a sense of IndyCar in terms of its popularity and just maybe general interest? Has IndyCar taken some leaps in a country like Sweden that maybe hasn't always had a vibrant passionate IndyCar fan base in the last couple years?
100%. I think before me and Felix started in IndyCar in 2019, not a lot of people knew about IndyCar. I think some older people knew about it because of Kenny Brack in the 90s when he was here, but it was definitely not many people knowing about it for the last 10 years. And then, all the races are live on TV now in Sweden, so a lot of people follow the races and watch it. And I know for a fact there is a lot of good numbers on these broadcasts. So it's definitely a big following, and I'm expecting more and more Swedes to come over and see IndyCar racing. And everyone that does, they just love it because of the experience they have here, the atmosphere, the accessibility you have in IndyCar when you go to a race. So I always tell fans when I meet them, you have to go to a race to experience it firsthand, because it is truly a unique experience, and nothing like Formula One where it's so closed off. Like IndyCar is made for fans, and I love that about IndyCar.
Well, Marcus Ericsson, thank you so much for taking some time out of your morning to join us live here on Pit Pass Live. We wish you the best of luck, and would love to have a chat with you tomorrow morning talking about how you won the biggest race in your life.
Sounds like a good plan.
All right.
Let's do that.
We'll do that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for Marcus Ericsson again joining us this morning on Pit Pass Live. He starts 5th in the Husky Chocolate Chip Ganassi Racing Honda. We are now joined by a true legend of this sport, Mario Andretti, winner of the 1969 Indianapolis 500, a true legend of this sport. Mario, thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
My pleasure, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
As you can probably see behind us, we're surrounded by a massive pool of fans. Folks love you always, around any racetrack, but I think you and your family have something special around here. Can you take me through what back to normal race day morning is like for you, trying to navigate this paddock and enjoy the folks that just love to come and see you and give you a wave?
Well, Nathan, wherever you need to be, you have to leave a bit earlier.
I can imagine.
It's so wonderful to have fans that love to engage, and that's what it's all about. That's what we're here for. That's what the sport, that's the enjoyment of the sport. This is showbiz, and they're the audience, and, obviously there's so much energy. Can you imagine, when the fans weren't here, the difference? And we experienced that. I never thought in the world that we would ever experience that. How terrible that was. Mm-hmm. How, just insignificant in so many ways. And look at now, just, back to normal. So, yeah, the fans are everything. And, it's amazing. It's the way they express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
your son Michael Andretti has a 5-car effort out there. Your grandson Marco is in this race. I think the stat that I remember, Marco, by starting this race today, actually passes Michael in terms of starts here in the Indianapolis 500. Crazy to think, because I know we think of Marco as a guy that is still so young and hopefully has many 500s to come. He started this race, what was it, at 19 in 2006, nearly won this thing. You guys as a family have been trying to win this race with a guy who has an Andretti last name for years. I know he's starting a little bit further back, right around 20th today, but do you feel like Marco might have the car to be able to surprise some people today?
Well, I'm surprised how positive he's feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and he's one that doesn't put on an act, if you know what I mean. He says that they've done a lot of work. Obviously, they didn't have the speed to be up front qualifying, but they've really done a lot of work on the race setup. Hope it pays off. It's a long way to go for him, but here you never know. If you can really operate in traffic, that you should be okay. Then you never know what's going to happen up front. And as far as some strategies and whatever. But the fact that he's feeling good going in, that's a way to start.
We talked to him after the first day of practice. I believe it was last Wednesday, after we just run the first day of practice on Tuesday. And I would agree, I sensed a little bit more of a calmness, maybe a contentness with Marco. in terms of where his racing life has led him. He only ran the 500 in IndyCar last year, but as he mentioned to us then, he was still coming off a full-time IndyCar season, so he was still maybe kind of in that mode of full-time or near full-time racing. He's now had a full year away from IndyCar. He's been doing some other things on the side, including SRX. Do you sense a little bit of a different Marco Andretti, a calmer one, and potentially a more competitive one out there on the track for this afternoon's race?
Well, I think I do, actually, and the fact is that he's just choosing what he's doing. You know, he said, I'm not going to be doing anything that anybody else wants me to do. I just want to control my own destiny, and like it or not, that's where I'm happy. So got to go with that, you know, and it's whatever melts your butter. That's the way I say it. And again, you know, he's of age to certainly make his own decisions. And, you know, Indy seems to be the all important thing to him. Again, hope that he's the one that can bring another one for us. I mean, they've had enough of us participating here. As you know, in 91 and 92, there were 4 of us qualified for this race. And there's a lot of pride there, obviously, as a family, how much from my side and my brother Aldo's side had participated here with John. So anyway, but we keep on going, you know, and we love what we're doing. And every year it's a new approach, a new challenge, and we're looking forward to it. So we're all in, you know, and with Michael with his team, and then of course, you know, I'll be there rooting for Marco, you know, because that's where I feel that's where my loyalties are, obviously.
Since you won your 500 in 1969, you started on pole before Marco started on pole. He finished runner-up. Michael had some great close chances in this race. What would another Indy 500 victory mean to this family that I know has put so much into IndyCar, of course, but into this 500-mile race that is the greatest spectacle in racing?
Nathan, I don't know if I can even express that. You know, obviously, you know, we'd have a hell of a party.
Can only imagine.
Just no question. I almost feel like with everything we put into it, that we deserve it somewhere. We deserve a little bit of luck, if you will. You know, as you know, many times Michael has been close to making this happen, and myself, I had my chances, but the reliability of today's cars, obviously, you know, you have the best chance of finishing. That was not the case with the rules the way they were when I was active, you know, or even Michael. So again, I think I always say that on my side, I think I was born 40 years too early, because my style would have really worked today. Because today, they just go from the get-go, you know. Patience doesn't work today, but patience worked in those days. I never had that. Never had the patience.
Do you see a little bit of yourself in Colton Herta, for example?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like to think so, mainly because I know his love also, his ambitions that he has just beyond here. Everything is important, obviously, and but you know, he's looking to Formula One, you know, in his career, and then obviously finishing his career here like I did. So yeah, there are a lot of things that seem to have some similarities, if you will. And I just love the kid. I love the young man, just his approach, his demeanor, and what he's been able to do so far, which is real, no question. I think on a Formula One stage, he will make America proud.
Real quick on his race, I know he crashed on Friday. The team has to roll out a completely brand new backup car. You've been around this place so many times. What are some of the nerves around the Andretti camp of just the unknowns of what you might have to deal with when you bring a car that has never practiced at this race yet?
Well, obviously, you know, there are some unknowns, but I have the confidence in the team, the knowledge they have, the data they have. And he'll be in a good car, and I'm not concerned about his approach or how he feels. I think he's all in, no problem. So from that standpoint, I mean, hopefully the worst is behind him, and you just move forward. You got to be positive, you know. And I don't think his approach has changed at all from the race. He's still, you know, thinking of winning it, and that's the way you should be. So.
And the last thing for you before we let you go here, I got a chance to chat with you, chat with Michael, chat with Colton in Miami a few weeks ago. You guys were there trying to make every effort to make this Andretti Global Formula One team get off the ground. I know Michael said that there's plans to start constructing your guys' new facility, even if you guys haven't gotten the okay yet. But we can tell things are rolling, and I know that it would mean so much, the Andretti team and the Andretti Autosport family at large. What can you tell us about where that is now and your hopes for getting to the finish line here in a couple months?
Well, Nathan, I can tell you that we are vigorously working every single day toward that. You know, there's no lull, if you will, you know, in the approach. As you could say, that a lot of the plans are going ahead regardless, thinking that there's no way they can refuse us. You know, hopefully I'm right. And but there's a few hurdles, you know, to go over yet. But I'm actually surprised that they're not a little more forthcoming, you know. But nevertheless, I think Michael and his partners, their objective is clear, long-term, and total commitment. And again, you know, the sport in general, the major disciplines, that's what we live for. That's what Michael, I'm proud of his ambitions. You know, he just wants to reach for the stars everywhere that he goes. Why not? You know, and again, that's been our life. And you know, we're now in third generation, so we keep going.
Mario Andretti, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Pit Pass Live. Best of luck to Andretti Autosport, to Michael, to Colton, to everyone on this team, and we hope to hear and see you celebrating a 500 here this afternoon.
I'll do the snow angel in the middle of the track if Marco wins today.
All right, we'll hold you to that. We will be joined now after Mario here by another legend of this place. Name is Doug Boles. He is the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There is no busier man around this place in not only the month of May, but certainly on race day here for the Indianapolis 500. He's a legend for the lack of sleep he gets as he prepares in the final days for this race. But we have now a chance to host 300,000 people here that we've been waiting so long for. I'm sure you're tired. I'm sure you're running on a lot of adrenaline. But as you came to the Speedway this morning, saw the sun coming up, saw fans start rolling into the track at 6 a.m. Can you kind of just take us through the emotions that you were feeling here today, Doug?
It's, well, you're going to make me emotional, honestly. You know, it's been 3 years since we've been able to do this, and I know what it means to our fans. I'm one. This is my 46th Indianapolis 500. My dad brought me here for the first time in 1977, and so many people have that same story. You remember the first time you came and why you came, and sometimes you're still with those people that brought you, and sometimes those people have gone on, and you remember those moments. And to be able to allow everybody to come back for the first time in 3 years is really, really powerful. And you know, I woke up yesterday morning, haven't been to sleep since then. I stayed here last night. I spent a lot of time in the Coke lot with the campers who we haven't been able to have in a couple years, and just enjoying those folks being able to kind of reignite the traditions that they've had. It's just going to be really great to have everybody here. And back home again in Indiana is going to be a tough one for me.
Mm-hmm. Whether it's the campers in the Coke lot, the folks here in the Snake Pit, just the ability to have, I mean, what is it, the simple math, 165,000 more people here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway than last year. I know some of those fans are probably still trickling in, and we may not get the visual effect of what that looks like and sounds like and feels like until we started to get into those pre-race festivities. But do you have a sense of just walking around this place this morning, maybe even, you know, let's take the Coke lot out of it, just inside the grounds of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, do you have a sense of how much more vibrant and energetic and exciting this place is than last year?
I think we felt it even when we first opened the gates to get ready for the GMR Grand Prix. There was just an energy level of people feeling like they could come back. And certainly over the last week qualifying, you felt that on qualifying Sunday, that energy level. Carb Day was the same. Even in the rain, I couldn't believe how many people came out on a rainy day to hang out with us. Yesterday, theoretically, we closed our gates at 1 o'clock. We had people in here until like 4 as our staff is trying to get everything ready. So there's definitely a different energy level here. And we're definitely going to be over 300,000 people here. My hope is we're at 325,000.
Okay.
So it's going to be a big day. The Snake Pit, having that going again. I'm really excited to have those younger folks back here at the Speedway. It's a pretty powerful weekend.
You were talking in the media center, I think it was on Thursday, just about preparations and letting fans know what they needed to expect as we came to the biggest crowd here that we've seen in 20 to 25 years. I know you said then that you expected to have somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 empty seats in the grandstand, and it just amazed me still the number of people that are coming up in the days before, some even race day morning and buying tickets here. Your guys' ticket staff has to just be working around the clock. I know they're a group of folks that maybe don't get a whole lot of credit,
Right.
but I know through the process of reissuing tickets and credits and what the last couple years were, having to hold a steady line at 135,000 last year, and this year trying to come up with ways to just get as many people in here as you possibly could. What can you maybe put some words to the effort and the passion that those folks behind the scene that we don't see put in to get us to today?
So our ticket team, actually, the last 2 years, 3 years have been really hard for them. You think about when we went ahead and decided, okay, we're not going to have the race in May of 2020. They had to deal with all their customers there. We were going to have it in August of 2020 with fans. So they went through 4 or 5 different versions of what seating would look like, right? And we would keep changing on them. 7 days a week they worked to try and get us ready for August, which ultimately had nobody here. Our ticket team is here, first people here and the last people leave. They don't see the race. They'll be working until basically halfway through the race, just making sure that people need tickets, they get in. They love the event for what it is, and those are the folks that really don't get to celebrate and don't get to be part of it. Our facilities team, our marketing team, everybody else is out here right now seeing these happy faces. Our ticket team is still right now fulfilling orders and getting people their tickets. They're an amazing group of people, and one thing I like about them is they know our people. They understand where folks have come from. I think most of the interactions people have with our ticket team, they say that's the greatest ticket team in the world.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your first Indy 500 was 1977. That, of course, is a pretty big year in this place's history. It was the first year that we saw a 4-time winner of the greatest spectacle in racing. You got to experience that again as the president of this track last year. I know you've told us countless times the stories of sitting in your office late in this race. I know you don't maybe say that you have a favorite driver or a fan that you're really rooting for, but I know you were pulling for Helio because you knew what this next 365 days would mean for this facility, for this race, for this sport. Can you take me through what those closing moments of the race last year were for you?
Well, I always get the question, who do you think would be great to win the Indy 500? And having another 4-time winner in Helio was always one of those 3 or 4 answers to that question. So I spend most of my time in the grandstands with fans. I'll do most of that today, but I'm trying to get back trackside in the infield by 10 or 15 laps to go, just to be there in case something's going on. So I was back in turn 2. I got a little broom closet that they basically turned into a little office for me. It literally was a janitor closet. So I sit in there, and as Alex, Palou, and Helio are competing, it just hit me that, oh my gosh, I don't want Helio to be second again. And I love Alex Palou, and he won the NTT IndyCar Championship. But this crowd wanted Helio to win. They wanted Helio to win. So I closed the door because I didn't want people to see me just cheering on Helio. and so I was just rooting for Helio. And like I said, I love Alex, but man, in that moment, I was an Helio fan 100%, as were a lot of our fans. And the way he celebrated couldn't have been any better. I'm just excited to have a 4-time winner. Obviously, we lost Al last summer. AJ's not a spring chicken anymore, and Rick's in his 70s. So it's nice to have somebody in their 40s that over the next 30 years, this Indianapolis Motor Speedway can promote and get excited about.
We had a conversation, it was about a week ago, right after qualifying, about the history behind Helio's win last year, the emotions around it, what it did for him, what it did for you guys. And I know there's a prospect, even though it would be a bit of a long shot for him to potentially win his 5th this year. He, of course, won back-to-back in 2001, 2002. He's the last person that has done so. How different do you feel like a historical moment like that, a thing that no one in this race's, 111 years, 111-year history has seen or done or accomplished? How much wilder would that celebration be like compared to what we saw last year?
You know, I know from Helio's standpoint it would certainly be wilder. I know, and I think our fans would embrace that too. At some level, I don't think we know what the energy level would be like to have that happen. Sort of like when AJ won his fourth, people it never happened before, so nobody really knew. And I know Helio feels like he's got a great race car, and he feels like he has a great chance of winning a fifth one. And then there's the promoter in me that can make an argument either way. Having a fifth, never having happened before is really cool, but it's also kind of cool to have those four-time winners that you can always celebrate. So whatever happens, will happen. And if Helio's a 5-time winner, then we're going to embrace it and have a great time with him. And if he has to stick in the same group with AJ Foyt, Rick Mears, and Al Unser Sr., I think he'll be fine.
You mentioned back home again in Indiana, you expect to be an emotional moment for you today. Is it that, or is there any other moment of the pre-race festivities here that you always look forward to every single year that really either gets you in the spirit or tugs on your emotional heartstrings?
Yeah, so the two big moments for me are the military march. When the military marched down the front stretch in pit lane and this crowd stands up and gives them that respectful sort of wave as they clap for them. It is Memorial Day weekend. So much of what we do is celebrating the men and women served and the families and the men and women who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So that to me is just really powerful, and it's so much rooted in what we're all about. But then when you get those 90 seconds of back home again in Indiana, there's nothing like it, not just today or the month of May, but for me the entire year is all about those 90 seconds, and it's a flood of emotions. Those memories we talked about of walking through here with my dad the first time, being so proud to be a Hoosier and from Indianapolis. I love this state. I love this city. And we're on an international stage there, and I think all 325,000 people in here today, when that song goes, they're a Hoosier no matter where they came from.
Let's take Helio out of the conversation. From a promoter's standpoint, who do you feel like, and maybe let's take Connor out of the picture too, because I know you're rooting him on today too. From a promoter standpoint or from a fan standpoint, who would you love to see win this race this year? Are there a couple that stand out?
I think from a fan standpoint, I mean, clearly Ed Carpenter, people know his passion for this place. He's been fast here. He's been close here. You hear it when Ed's introduced. This place loves Ed Carpenter. So Ed Carpenter winning an Indy 500 would be massive. I think Connor fits in that a little bit. I know He's my stepson, but he's local. When he took the lead last year, he heard the crowd. So there's something about that connection to our local folks. So I think both of them definitely are folks that could be there. Tony Kanaan, he loves this place. He's relocated his family here. He's another one that I think is good. Marco Andretti, you just had Mario on. Having an Andretti win the Indianapolis 500 would be huge internationally for us. It's been so long since Mario won in '69. To have Marco win would be a massive international story. So there's a lot of great storylines. And I know our IndyCar fans are on the fence about this, but Jimmie Johnson winning the Indy 500 is also another way to get a lot of people to pay attention to us that might not otherwise. And I think he's got a shot. Maybe not the easiest to promote broadly, but certainly in the racing community. Scott Dixon, would be another great story if Scott Dixon could pick up a second win.
Absolutely. Well, we wished you best wishes as you're in your broom closet with about 20 laps to go here
I'll be there
today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Pit Pass Live this morning. Doug Boles, president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. All right, well, that was an incredible run of guests here this morning. We still have a little bit left in our show. Joining me back here now, Matt Glenesk, sports editor
it's been a while
at the Indianapolis Star. It has been a while.
So we went from a driver to an all-time great driver, then to the guy who runs this place, and now you're stuck with me. Sorry about that, guys. Quite the drop-off, and I'm sure I'm watching all the viewer numbers just skyrocket, plummet. All right, so that was fun. I think Mario has brought the largest crowd we've ever had here for Pit Pass Live.
I would say between him this year and Zak Brown last year, coming off of the heat of Drive to Survive, it was probably like the peak of that series, I think, in this country. It was just a really cool place to be. I felt bad. I mean, it was awesome to have Mario on here, but I knew pulling him
We
out
rushed.
here.
We rushed Mario off the set to get Doug
did.
Boles in here.
We did, and then he stayed around for probably the next guest or two. He's such a gracious person around here.
He is.
Loves the fans. I'm not sure, maybe outside Doug Boles, there's probably not too many people that love to see this place packed with fans more than Mario Andretti.
I mean, yes, 1969 was his only win here, which is crazy to think that he's only won once here.
Yep.
But he is one of those three or one of the two that have won here and Daytona 500, which Jimmie Johnson will have the opportunity to join him amongst that great list. How was Doug?
Doug was incredible. I know
that blue suit. I think that's his race day suit now officially.
It might be, but one of my goals in this position at the Star, I so badly want to take a video camera into Doug Boles' closet because
I'm sure it's just all blue suits.
I mean, it's you see him in one almost every single time. I don't know that I've ever seen him in gray or black or anything else, but there has to be.
Speaking of suits,
it's not
look at
a
that!
suit,
Look at that
but
jacket. That's
it's,
nice. We're actually taking a lot of heat because we color coordinated an accident on social media. We're taking some heat, but you look fire. This is a great look.
I appreciate it.
You should have texted me last night though, and I would have told you.
I almost did, and now I'm kicking myself.
But
that's what I get.
No, now we look like Helio homers because isn't he in the pink car?
True. He is in the pink
So we
car,
look like
along with
homers.
Simon Pagenaud, but Helio I think is most famous for it, certainly.
All right, so what are we looking for here? What do we got to talk about? We've talked about Helio. Well, let's stick with Simon Pagenaud then, since we're wearing pink and we mentioned him. The 2019 winner. Last year, started way back in the field, finished third.
Yep.
And so is there anyone you see this year that can make a late charge like that? You've talked about some people who are starting in the back of the field that might be able to get in like the top 15, top 10. Is there anyone from 20 back that you think can get in the top 5?
20 back. The first person that comes to mind is Alexander Rossi, who I think is starting 20th. Both him and Graham Rahal, they talked in Media Day on Thursday this week. Alex basically said outright, Graham knows what I'm doing. He knows where I'm going, and if he's smart, he'll follow me. I would watch out for those guys. They're in row 7, 20th, and 21st.
So lap 1 fireworks from those two?
I would, not between them, but I would look for Rossi to make a move to the outside and watch for that number 15 Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing Honda to follow him pretty quickly and see what they can do to make up some early spots. 20th and 21st, certainly not impossible to do that, but they've got a lot of work because I know this race with the temperatures, the sun, the conditions, I don't know that I expect to see someone jump from, say, 26th up to 3rd, but if someone is hoping to go,
So you just said Helio's got no shot, is what you just said. That's what I heard.
It would be that. I think we've seen someone come from maybe 28th as far back as a winner has come in this field. I don't know that there would be a greater motorsports feat for someone who not only would come from 27th, but to win his 5th 500 and do so back-to-back at 46 and now 47 years old. I would challenge you on Twitter to come up with a greater feat in motorsports history than if Helio were to win this race today.
All right, get into his mentions. It's at by Nathan Brown. I think there's an underscore between the Nathan and the Brown. Was there another Nathan Brown that you needed the underscore for?
It's a fairly popular name, especially, even in journalism. So I did the I think it's by underscore Nathan Brown to be able to hold on to that and convey I'm a journalist and also not maybe have Indy Star in there like I know a bunch of people do. I think there's a character limit on those, and so it's not super easy to come up with
Gotcha,
one.
yeah, Glennesque, you're looking at the only Glennesque journalism that I know.
That's
so,
true.
Yeah. So we talked about Helio. We talked about guys coming from the back. With Rossi, is it weird for him with the Andretti and the McLaren? Is there some weirdness there for him?
I'm not.
And will it weirdness in terms of this race? Is his team all in with him kind of thing?
I have to think so. There's no race bigger than the Indianapolis 500. Winning this race for this team, if you're a guy on Helio's car, Brian Bardenhart is calling his race on the pit box, would be an incredible thing for Brian to help Alex get there and win this race. They've got unnamed, untold number of crew members, mechanics, guys that even just drive this car and the transporters from race to race. Everyone, if they are assigned to this team, there might be some hurt feelings, you might say, behind the scene that we won't necessarily hear about as to that relationship. But when it comes to race day, those guys are going to do everything they can to get Alexander Rossi to the finish line. Now, if he does win this race, there's going to be a lot of awkward questions to answer on that podium. If you get Michael and Alex up there together like we saw Helio and Mike Shank last year, we're going to ask some questions at the start about how they did it, what it means for them from an emotional standpoint, from an Andretti Autosport standpoint. But if no one else asks it, I'll be the first to do it. I mean, I think it's pretty publicly understood that Alex is not going to be with this team next year. We all believe and understand that he is headed to Air McLaren SP to start his next future at IndyCar in 2023, and I think we will hear about those plans here within just a couple weeks. He told me several weeks back, still in May, at the Miami Grand Prix, that he has signed his new deal. He wouldn't tell me then where that new deal would put him, but he's also said in recent interviews that he feels like there are 3 teams in this series that can win a championship, and Andretti Autosport was not one of those that he listed. I know that's the thing that he is working for more than anything. He's won a 500 as we talked about as a rookie. I'm sure he'd love to win it again, but he's even said in some interviews this week that winning the 500 would be great, but potentially the best thing about it in terms of where he stands in his racing career is right now is it's double points, and he sits a ways back in the championship battle this year. I'm sure he'd love to win a championship, even if it's his last year at Andretti Autosport. But he's got some work to do if he hopes to be in that hunt this year.
Speaking of championship points, I feel like we haven't even mentioned Will Power's name. Alex Palou, who's number 2 in the series. I mean, when you look at this field, you see a ton of names you recognize, a ton of guys who you think could win this race, who have experience here. Then you've got a lot of these youngsters. I mean, you look at row 1, you've got Scott Dixon, obviously, who's won the pole, has won this race 2008.
Yes.
So it's been a while since he's won it. But I read from you that he has a chance to surpass Al Unser Sr. for the most laps led in the Indianapolis 500's history in this race. So, I mean, and that's Dixon. But then you look at who's next to him in line in row 1. It's Alex Palou, young, up-and-coming race winner already this year. Then you've got Rinus VeeKay, who's another young gun. When you look at that first row, it kind of shows that there's the old guard of IndyCar and then the new guard that's coming. And then, of course, you got the Pato Award behind them. I mean, we haven't mentioned Joseph Newgarden, who was amongst those young guns probably 4 or 5 years ago, but now he's a veteran. So, I mean, it does seem like this series is in good hands.
Absolutely. We heard a lot about that old versus new, green versus experienced dichotomy last year. Dixon was also on pole in 2021, and he started next to 21-year-old Colton Herta and a 20-year-old Rinus VeeKay. So we have a very similar situation this year. Alex Palou is a bit older. He's accomplished a bit more in his just couple years in IndyCar with his championship last year. He won 3 races. He's been a front runner throughout this season, but I think maybe as we saw last year, at least, I mean, it's a one race example, but experience in this place matters so much. I don't know that it matters as much, say, on the road course here or at Barber or maybe even at an oval like Texas. But when you're going 500 miles, you're spending 3 hours in the car, you're running through a week plus of practice to try to get your car in the right place. Experience around this place means so much. The last time we saw a rookie win was Alexander Rossi in 2016, and since then we've seen Takuma Sato, veteran, Will Power, veteran, Simon Pagenaud, still a bit of a maybe a younger veteran.
Rossi's was a strategic fluke. I mean, I wouldn't say that to his face, but I mean, there were some gas issues, some fuel, and he just, that's how he won the 100th, correct?
That's true, but there's something also probably to the fact that he was able to use just enough fuel to get himself to the finish line, but not too much that he, ran out on the backstretch of lap 200. So there's something there, and the fact that he was able to even put his car in contention through, say, 170 of the 200 laps. We don't see too many young guys like, say, Palou last year, who was running second and even led this race with 2 laps to go, be able to do that. So that was maybe something that we don't often expect. I would certainly not be surprised if we had another one of those 25 and under guys that are fighting for this win. But as we saw with Helio last year, maybe if there isn't lap traffic that they're coming on, maybe Alex has a better chance, but I also don't know if Helio makes that pass. When he made it because he knew they were coming on lap traffic. He knew that if he made it right then with 2 laps to go, that Alex would have a very tough time finding another place to make a pass with the clutter of the lap traffic they were coming up on. So if I had to make a pick, I really think it's one of these older, more experienced guys that wins this race. Whether it's Dixon,
we're going to do picks later.
All right,
okay,
there we go.
Don't get ahead of ourselves
All right.
on these picks, okay? You mentioned Sato. He's got the chance to be a 3-time winner with 3 different teams.
Mm-hmm.
How unique is that?
Well,
I guess it's never been done, so it's very unique.
I'm trying to remember. I think if memory serves me right, it was either Foyt or Unser might have won 3 of their 4 with some different teams.
Okay.
So there's some some history behind that. I'm not sure if it has been done for someone's first 3 500s, as you mentioned, 2017 Andretti Autosport, 2020 with Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. This year, I think, would be the most surprising of all. Those 2 teams we mentioned before are often up near the front. Ray Hall had not won this race since 2004 with Buddy Rice, but they have grown a lot since then. Graham has been a staple around this place and is often at the front. But to do the same thing he did a couple years ago with Dale Coyne Racing would be an absolute incredible feat. They're a team that is always turning over drivers. They're often losing some of their best mechanics and engineers to other teams. We saw last year Romain Grosjean, as a rookie, goes and runs an incredible season, has a couple podiums, 1 pole, and then he goes and leaves for Andretti Autosport, and his engineer, Olivier Boisson, who had been with Coyne for quite some time, follows him to Andretti as well. So that's the tough part about being maybe a mid-pack team in this field, is that if you have someone who is strong, whether it be a driver or an engineer, there's always those top teams that are looking to replace or add and bolster their lineups, and it's really tough to hold on to those folks.
You had mentioned this name earlier, and it's a very popular name here in Indiana, especially Central Indiana, and that's Connor Daly. He's a very popular guy. He's funny, and then people like that. He was on The Amazing Race with Alexander Rossi, so he's got a little more cachet to him for people who might not be race fans.
Mm-hmm.
But this seems like his best opportunity, almost. Like, is he in the best car that he has? Is this the best? I think this is his 5th or 4th 500. Is that about right?
I feel like he's run a couple more than that, but he was bouncing around.
Are we counting
so
one that
early
didn't
on.
even start, where the car wouldn't even start? Does that count as a start?
It's a start, I guess,
Yeah.
but he certainly didn't get too far. But I would agree. The car that he had at Andretti when he finished, I think, 10th a couple years back was really strong, but that was a one-off opportunity with the team he'd never run with before. Coming into his 3rd season with Ed Carpenter Racing, we all know he had a great car last year. He led the most laps, led 40 laps. If not for Graham Rahall's wheel, that just, as Connor put it, I think is a really funny way to put it, just fell out of the sky and landed on Connor's car at lap 118 in last year's race. Connor very well could have been fighting for that win at the end of the race last year. Still managed to finish 13th with a slightly damaged car. Props to him for that. But I know going into last year's race, he felt like he had a pretty good car, but he was fighting from around that mid-pack place. He's in a similar spot this year, but they changed very, very little on this car outside of things that you might change for different conditions, temperatures, and things like that you're running in. But Connor comes back again with a great car, another year to work with this team at Ed Carpenter Racing. He's got Tim Broyles on his timing stand this year, who's a veteran of Ed Carpenter Racing. It's going to be a tough one if Connor's going to replicate what he did last year, but I do agree. I think this is his best opportunity, and we'll see what he does with it, and if he takes advantage of it, what it might mean for his future.
You want to talk about seamless segues, going from Ed Carpenter Racing. We actually have a videoed interview from earlier with Ed Carpenter, so we're going to listen to that right now.
Thanks for coming back to Pit Pass live here on race day morning at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Of course, you can see now I'm joined by the driver of the number 33 Chevrolet for Ed Carpenter Racing. Driver owner this month, a little bit more driver. In this case, it's Ed Carpenter, hometown hero, starting 4th today for the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. Ed, you guys are always up here really strong, your car in particular. How does this race day feel compared to years past in terms of where you're starting and the cars around you and how you feel like this day might go?
I mean, it feels like another really good opportunity. You know, we obviously gave ourselves a solid starting position, and you know, we also feel very confident in our race cars. So, you know, that gives you confidence, but it doesn't really guarantee or mean anything until we go out and execute in the race. It's going to be an interesting day, you know, with a lot of sunshine, high track temperatures, we think. You know, so just got to make it through 500 miles.
Talked to you earlier this week at Media Day and asked you a little bit about what your philosophy was in terms of you know, leading laps, deciding to trail. I know you guys have led a lot of laps early in this race. Is that ultimately you know, advantageous depending on how the race goes, or do you feel like you guys might maybe lead, you know, stay back a little bit this year and let some guys burn some more miles off?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to it's dangerous just to jump out and lead, because if you give up a couple laps to guys that are saving fuel, you know, and those 2 laps start cycling up over the course of the race, coming to the end of the race, they have a much shorter pit stop. So you, early on anyway, you kind of have to hedge your bets a little bit, and you know, you need to stay at the front, you need to save fuel. You know, we'll probably be able to tell pretty early what Scott and those guys are trying to do, but need to keep our options open, and you know, hopefully Reyes and I can stick together and keep the Ganassi gang split apart and make it fun all day.
You were asked sometime in this last week or so what it is about this Ed Carpenter Racing team that allows you guys to qualify so well, so consistently here. For a couple years in a row now, you guys have been the lead team for Chevy when it comes to the 500. I know you won't, you know, give too much away, but is that something that you feel like is really important to this team in terms of always being up there, having a chance to win here year after year?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, it really boils down to our people. You know, we've got a phenomenal group of people. Most of them have been with us for a long, long time, and they truly care about the product that we put on track. So I think it just comes down to the people.
Another one of your drivers here in this field, Connor Daly, starting a little bit farther back than you guys. But he showed us last year that he has what it takes to be able to make it up the front. He led the most laps in last year's race, 40, I believe. What's it going to take for Connor to be able to make some moves here in this race today? I know we've got some hotter temperatures, so passing may be at even a little bit more of a premium than we saw last year. What's it going to take for Connor to be able to lead some more laps here today?
I mean, I think everyone expects today to be more difficult than last year with the amount of sunshine, and it's going to be quite a bit warmer than last year too. So, you know, it's going to take them probably a little longer and a little more work to get to the front. But you know, yeah, need to be able to pass cars and need to make the right strategy decisions as well to ease the burden of how many cars you have to pass. So. You know, I think they've got a good game plan. You know, Tim Broyles is on his timing stand, and he knows what to do.
When you have 2 cars up here starting up near the front, Renus is third, you're fourth. You mentioned that group of Ganassis. They've got the other 4 cars in the first 2 rows for you guys. How much of a help is it to have 2 maybe bullets, as you say, to be able to break them up or branch off on different strategies, or try to, you know, if you were to get in the lead, trade that lead off back and forth to try and stay up at the front and maybe keep them at bay a little bit?
It definitely gives you options. Like you said, if we're in a position where we end up at the front, you know, we can try to help each other manage fuel a little bit, you know, and we can just try to work together to keep them from having as many cars to work together, because you know, they've really got opportunities to do a lot of different things with how they deploy their cars and what their objectives are. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it.
You've started on this pole of this race 3 times. You are almost constantly starting up here at the front. You had a really awesome chance to win this race in 2018, and things just didn't go your way in terms of luck there on race day. I know lots of folks here would love to see you win this race. I can't even imagine how much you want to win this race. How has this been for you over maybe the last decade or so, being up there toward the front, hoping that someday Lady Luck here might roll your way? And do you feel like you have as good a chance as ever today?
I do feel like I have a great opportunity. You know, I think one of the things I've learned the most, though, over these 18 going into my 19th race is that you can't force it. You know, I mean, whether you have a good car or a bad car, you know, I've driven races that I've been proud of, and I've driven races where I haven't done as good of a job. And usually the races where I haven't done as good of a job, I'm trying to make something happen. So, you know, this race, you've got to take what the race gives you, take what your car gives you, and you know, hope that you catch some breaks along the way. You know, I certainly think we have the car to be there, and it's really just going to come down to execution and a little bit of luck.
As a hometown guy around this place whose family was involved in IMS forever, do you have a sense of what the atmosphere around IMS would be like if a hometown Indiana guy like Ed Carpenter, or even Connor Daly for that effect, would be able to win this race here on a Sunday afternoon?
I mean, the only thing I can really base it off of is driver intros. You know, that's the only time that I really get a good feel for the energy of the crowd behind me. You know, I hear people tell me about, you know, how loud they get when we're qualifying, but unfortunately I just can't hear it. I wish so badly that I could, but you know, hopefully today's the day we see what happens.
That's all we have. Got some more guests coming up here later on in this show. Thanks so much, Ed, for joining us again. He's the number 33 Alzamend car for Ed Carpenter Racing. Chevrolet. That's an important. At number 33, Ed Carpenter Racing Chevrolet. Alzamend is their primary sponsor, and he is running off 4th in today's 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. And we're back again for Pit Pass Live. My name is Nathan Brown, your motorsports insider with the Indianapolis Star, joined now by our sports columnist, Greg Doyle. Greg's been a staple coming to these 500s for us for several years now. So excited to be able to have you on again and take you through the day with us. First, let's just talk about this.
Let's talk about how much I look like Ed Carpenter.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, we went from you and Ed to you and me, and I can't tell a difference. I also I thought the guy was Dana White out here, but he might just be another bald white guy. Might have been me in the mirror washing my hands in the bathroom, but we all kind of look the same out here.
We do. I mean, I think we're getting some flack online from Glennesk and I's pink attire. Lots of people watching to do out here, but Gasoline Alley is back full again. We're expecting more than 300,000 people here at this year's Indianapolis 500. We've still got several hours until the green flag. Being around this paddock, have you gotten a sense of this day and this crowd and this atmosphere feeling different than last year?
Well, yeah, this feels like I've been here since 15, and this is the most 100th-like feel that I've seen since number 100. You know, this feels that big almost. It'll be about that big, I think, by the time we're done. I'll just be Mr. Buzzkill here for a moment. I don't like walking around with 300,000 people. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm wearing masks when I'm not. I just don't like it. I know we're outside. I'm trying to be Mr. Buzzkill, but, you know, we're just all acting like life's normal. It's not. And it's better. It's so much better. It's so much better, but it's not normal. And frankly, it's kind of weirding me out watching everybody walking around like it's normal. It's not normal. You're not normal.
This day is so different from anything we experience or see in sports. I agree. I think the day was maybe Carb Day for me on Friday, where you started to really feel like the immensity of this crowd. When we talk about the build-up to this race, is there any part of this pre-race ceremony that gets you? I know you're not a Hoosier by where you were born, but you've been in this state now for close to 10 years. Is there a part of this build-up to this race that really hits you?
Yeah, I love, and I do it every year, I walk along the grid when they bring the cars out, and not a lot of us, but I'm one of them, gets access to walking among all the cars, you know, and they look like little toys. They look like toys from the media center. They look like toys on TV. They look like big toys in person. It's remarkable. And I walk by all 33 of them, and I'm taking notes on all 33, thinking one of these is going to win, and whatever I'm noticing here is going to get in my story. And then by the time the race happens, 2.5 hours of racing and all this, I haven't written a word yet about what I see out there on the grid. So now I just go out there just for my own sake. it's fun to be out there and to watch how some guys are in their car with an umbrella, some guys are standing next to it. It's just every driver has their own different thing about it.
What was writing about last year's spectacle with Helio winning like for you? I know when we went in, he probably wouldn't have been someone that we would have expected to win this race. He was in contention down to the wire and still really probably until that pass with a couple laps to go. I'm not sure any of us thought it was real or that it was going to happen, and then all of a sudden we've got one of the biggest racing stories that we've ever seen around this place unfolding before our eyes.
Yeah, and the story really happened. I mean, I guess it happened when he crossed the finish line, but then the story happened after that. I mean, the celebration that happened around the track and him, but also the drivers. And every year, a handful of drivers come and celebrate the winner because they all have some friends. But Helio, they were all coming for Helio. They were all coming for him, and he was loving it. And Mario Andretti was over there and kind of gave him a benediction, pulled him close. That celebration was the story. And I don't know how often you can have a race go that long, that many hours and miles, and really what happens immediately afterwards is a story. But that was crazy.
Would we see something similar to that if we have a hometown guy for this hometown crowd to cheer for, like, say, Ed Carpenter or Connor Daly? What would you expect this place to be like?
I don't know this for sure, but I think intellectually we all know and like and appreciate Ed Carpenter. But there's something visceral about Connor Daly. And he's good here. This is his best. I think this is the race he's most likely to win someday. Mm-hmm. If I had to say, you're going to win a race the next 10 years, I'd say it's this one. I
would agree. It
brings out the best of him here. And I don't know what that will look like. I know the paddock loves him, but I know the crowd loves him. So that will be, they might, burn down the fences and come hug him. That would be, the word is visceral. That would be different.
I think the thing to look out for if Connor wins this race is what the party is like in downtown Indianapolis at about 1 a.m. this evening. What he's going to be doing. As you mentioned, he's a visceral figure in this sport, and I don't know that there's anyone that would party better than Connor Daly winning this race.
Oh yeah, there's no question. When you mentioned the party downtown at 1, he'd be there pouring shots. He'd be or drinking from a shoe, or he'd be doing something. He'd be doing something fun.
Matt and I are going to get into our picks here in just a second. You gave us your pick earlier in the week that we unveiled on IndyStar.com. Take us through Alex Palou, if I'm remembering right, is your pick this year. He starts on the front row in the middle. Why do you feel like Alex has the best shot to win this race today?
Well, because he's going to win 3 or 4 of them, and I want to make sure I'm there for number 1. I don't know if it happens this year or not, but he's going to win 3 or 4. I think he's that good, and you'll see the teams he's on. You'll just see he's that good. But also, last year he almost won, and he was crushed that he didn't win. That Helio got him. He was crushed, and somebody in the media was asking him or telling him afterwards, Alex, you did so good, and you're going to have a lot more chances to win. And Alex Palou goes, yes, but I wanted this one. Broke my heart. Right then, you're my favorite. I want you to win. I want you to win this one. I want you to win next one. And I want you to win 20 more. But he is really, really good. And he's cute. And he says this one, and I think that's great. Alex, to me, the best driver is the one to say, I want this one. That elevates you to the top.
If we get down to a last couple laps battle between him and his teammate Scott Dixon, they're starting next to each other on the front row. What do you imagine something like that, maybe another veteran versus up-and-coming star battle might be like for this field and this race and this paddock?
All things being equal, Dixon's he's the best driver. He very clearly the best driver, but he's the best because he's the best driver. If he's going to win, it's because he's going to be in position to win. Whereas if he's head-to-head, if it's 50-50 between him and Alex Palou, Palou's taking him. Or Palou's going to run into the wall. Mm-hmm. But because Dixon's smart enough to know exactly how fast he can go and no faster, but no slower. Palou doesn't know what he doesn't know. And he wants to win this one. And so he'll do what he has to do. And so it'll be spectacular one way or the other. Palou's going to win that duel, or he's going to hit the wall really hard. and safely, because I like him a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Another person you spent a good amount of time with in the lead up to this race, Jimmie Johnson. You had a solo sit down with him really before things got going too much. I know there's a lot of eyeballs on him coming into this race. He told you a really interesting story about why he's here. What did you take away most from that conversation?
Well, first of all, everybody's shouting, "Hey, Bobby, way to go, Bobby!" And I don't know if they realize my name's Greg, so I appreciate all the support out here, but it's Greg with 2 G's. Jimmie, what I'll tell you about Jimmie and the conversation I had with him is, I don't know that I've ever sat down with a media guy or woman and thought, you've done more of these than I have, and you're better at this than I am, and you're in charge of this. I mean, I was told it's hard to get into him a little bit. And it's true. He's got a coat of, not I won't say plastic because that implies he's not real, but he's got a protective coat and then varnish and then an N495 mask. I mean, he's hard to get to. And I think he gave me some good insights because I just refused to go away, but he's polished. I hope he wins, but if he does win, I can tell you what he's going to say. I can write down the quotes for you just because they'll be right out of Bull Durham 101, but because he's good and he knows what not to say. But I like him, and he's handsome, and he's good on ovals, so there's my pick for number 3.
That would be awesome to see.
I got Flo 1. Who do I have 2? Do you remember?
I
obviously felt strongly about it.
I don't. I know we had a lot of people on our staff that picked Jimmie. I think I was maybe the only one that picked Scott Dixon.
I had Dixon too. Yeah, we had a lot of staffers on Jimmie. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I've got him 3rd, but that's because I like him and wrote about him. But that's not because I really think he's going to finish 3rd.
No, I mean, in terms of that group that Ganassi has, I mean, there's a lot of attention on him, but it's pretty.
All right.
I see you found a spot for that. Well, that's different than mine.
No.
Oh.
What is this good for?
To get you in other places.
Down there, 11 a.m. But thank you again so much for joining us. Those of you that stuck around from 8:30 to well past 10 o'clock. We've had a great show, great time. But let's get through these rows, row 11 down to row 1.
You want to do the grid?
Yeah.
We're doing the grid now? Good. Let me get my super duper sheet. I don't need a sheet. Look at this. Clark Wade hooking us up with the graphics.
Row 11, thing that sticks out to me, Stephen Wilson didn't have a chance to qualify for this race. He's the 33rd car to be announced for it. I'm really interested to see if his team can give him a car that just manages to get to the finish line all 200 laps or close to it. And if he does so, where he might finish and what that might do for the rest of his IndyCar career.
Row 10, I had no idea Juan Pablo Montoya was in this race. I didn't. He walked right by and he was wearing Bob Kravitz-style jeans. So I figured he was just here for the party, but guess not.
He's confident with his race car. I don't know that he can do it from 30th, but it will be interesting to see what he can do in this race with a great Air McLaren SP car. Now to
row 9.
Number 8 and 9.
Or not, or 6, 5, and 4.
That's okay. We can run through them. Let's go with what's on the screen right now. So row 6, keep an eye on Simon Pagenaud. He worked from 23rd to 3rd, or 26th to 3rd last year within a half second of the lead. I think he can do a similar thing and might be a guy outside the top 15 that I think has the best chance to win.
And I'll never talk about Jared Hildebrand. If you know, you know. Row 5, Joseph Newgarden, and then David Malukas and Santino Ferrucci, the guy with the curls.
I think he told us early in practice. He came here a little bit shorter here. I'd still say it's very long, but definitely a lot shorter than what it was when he was here for the open test in April. It was massive. I'm not sure he could hardly get it in his helmet then, and I think he had to do a little bit of a trim to actually get it in the helmet.
Does he know what humidity does to curls? Come
Maybe
on.
not.
Come on,
Maybe
Santino.
not. All right, row 4, Takuma Sato, Alex Palou, Will Power. Will Power is your points leader at the moment, just a couple points over Alex Palou, last year's championship winner, and a guy who has not yet won a race this year but has been really, really close. He's had a couple podiums. He finished second here last year. He starts second. He's a guy I would keep an eye on, and if either of those two guys wins this race, it is guaranteed that they will come away the points leader through 6 races with 11 more to go.
Just a correction, I think Jimmie Johnson is in row 4, Palou's in row 2, is that correct?
That is correct, yes,
okay.
That's
Just
right. So Jimmie, as you mentioned, Jimmie's starting 12th. Will Power is 11. I think Sato is 10th. Yeah, Jimmie, we've talked enough about Jimmie. This place will erupt
if he wins this race. If he's in contention for this race, not only the people here are going to go crazy, but the TV ratings, the people at NBC will go crazy at Jimmie Johnson.
I think they loved seeing Helio win last year, but I can't imagine there's a better storyline for NBC if Jimmie.
Yeah, if Jimmie Johnson is in the hunt, you will see a spike in TV ratings, and NBC executives will be dancing in the streets.
Guarantee it. All right, back to rows 7, 8, and 9.
Row 9 is fascinating. Row 9, you can have, you've got Scott McLaughlin, who is one of the best young drivers. You've got Colton Herta, who's one of the best young drivers. And then you've got Mr. Helio Castroneves, who's only won this race 4 times.
We talked about Rossi and Graham trying to link up together and potentially work this way up through the field. I would not be surprised to see some of these guys in row 9. None of them are teammates, but look for these guys to make some moves early as well. Row 8.
Nazareth, Pennsylvania, well represented in row 8.
You are very right about that. Sage Karam, Marco Andretti, Devlin DiFrancesco. Marco and Devlin, 2 Andretti drivers. Sage, a guy who has been coming here on one-offs for a year. Last year finishes top 7 in this race. Back with the same group, Brian Reinbold Racing. He's now got a teammate back this year.
How old is he? I feel like he's been driving this race since he was 16.
He might have made his first 500 start at 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah, like before the prom.
I think this is, so he's probably 18 then. So I think this is his 10th or 11th. So he's probably now 27, 28, maybe 29.
Woo, old man.
I know. A similar guy to Marco Andretti, who made his start year. He is the interesting Marco stat. He is now, at the start of this year's race, had more 500 starts than his dad, Michael Andretti, who was still racing his last 500 with Marco when Marco made his first start in 2006.
Fun stat. Fun stat there, Nathan. All right, row 7. Callum Ilott, Alexander Rossi, and Graham Rahal. We've talked a lot about Rossi. We've mentioned Rahal. Who is Callum Ilott?
Callum Ilott is a British ex-Formula 2 driver. He finished second in the Formula 2 championship in 2020. A guy that would have loved to have a chance at Formula 1 last year. Sat on the sidelines as a test and reserve driver for Ferrari and the teams that they are aligned with in Formula 1. Ended up feeling like there just wasn't going to be an opportunity for him there. So he leaves. He comes over, runs the last 3 races of the 2021 season with Juncos Hollinger Racing, signs on as a full season driver for them, the only one-car full-time team in this field. Callum's done an incredible job to start his first full-time IndyCar season. Made some solid finishes. I know being a one-car team at this place is really tough, but maybe expect to see some fireworks out of him if they can keep the car safe and have some clean stops today.
Tell me if I'm making this up, but it seems like over the last 9-8 years that we've seen, and I don't know what 9-8 instead of just 10, but it seems like a lot of the guys who are been on the fringe at F1 with the F2s, been the test drivers, have kind of realized that they can come over here and do some things. You know, Alexander Rossi was, a test driver forever, and then this was like an afterthought almost for him until he won in his rookie year. But it seems like we're seeing a lot of that. Obviously, Grosjean. We've had Fernando Alonso coming over from F1 as 2. I guess he's run 2, so it's not one-offs. Mm-hmm. But it seems like we're seeing a little more of the European flair. And obviously, you got Ericsson, Rosenquist, those guys. They've kind of just seen that IndyCar might be a thing for them because, not everyone can run F1.
That's right. I think part of the problem you see in Formula One nowadays is just the fact that they've got so many veterans that have been running in this series for years and years and years and may still be around for a while. And it just gets to a point where it's tough to stick around in that series. It's tough to, as a young driver, wait until an opportunity comes for you. And if you're a person like Callum, you don't want to be using the formative years of your racing career being a test and reserve driver, even if it's in Formula One. There's new, young, up-and-coming drivers that are coming through
I will
Formula
say
2.
visiting Monte Carlo is probably a little bit better than visiting St. Louis, Missouri.
Probably true. Probably true. But
Nothing against St. Louis,
but
Missouri.
I would imagine you would rather be racing in St. Louis,
Good point.
Missouri than
Good
sitting
point.
on the
Yep.
sidelines and watching Monaco, say, today,
100%.
as he would be doing if he was with Ferrari. He was the reserve driver at the Miami Grand Prix for Alfa Romeo, but I think his future does stay here in IndyCar.
All right, and here we are, the rows 3, 2, and 1. I mean, there's just the winner is probably coming from these 3 rows.
There's it more often than not, especially as we got away from the 2012, 13, 14, 15 era of the IndyCar aero kits, where passing was just so incredibly easy around this pace. Somewhere in those set of 500s, we saw the most passes that the 500 has ever seen. There's no way we're breaking anything or getting anywhere close to that this year or probably in the future. So I agree. I think with the conditions we're seeing today, I do think your winner is going to come from one of these 3, unless we see, I'd maybe extend that to maybe even row 4. You got guys like Power, Sato, and Jimmy a long shot, but I would be willing to go to the Caesars Sportsbook that's behind us, that's new here at IMS, and put a bet down that one
We're
of
not
these
sponsored,
top
but
12
we should be.
No, you're right. So
All right,
row
so it's sorry.
Yeah, I just was saying row 3. Watch out and see how Pato and Felix can work together to try and get up there toward the front. And if they are up around the front late, if there are 2 strategies, I would expect the team to split those and maybe kind of double their chances on trying to win this race.
All right. It's time everyone's been waiting for, besides the Mario interview and obviously, looking at your jacket. That's the headline, really. Who's winning this race? I want Nathan Brown's official prediction.
I picked Scott Dixon.
Are you
after
wavering?
I'm not.
Okay.
I feel like it's very easy, and I don't remember. I might have even picked Scott last year, but you see the speed. You see the fact that in race trim all throughout practice week, he was first or second virtually the whole time. He pops out in Monday's practice, misses the first hour as they're waiting to put their new race engine in the car after qualifying on Sunday, and he goes out of nowhere and just drops in the fastest lap of the whole practice session. Eventually that did go to, I believe, his teammate Alex Palou, but Scott just knows his place in and out. He's put his car in position to win this race. He's found so many ways either to lose this race himself, like making a bit of a risky strategy call last year and trying to stretch that first fuel window, or having some really bad luck, either being involved in crashes or having a late caution go against him like we saw in 2020 where he wasn't able to battle Takuma Sato over the final 5 laps. I just feel like someone like Scott Dixon, similar to Mario Andretti, and Mario only won 1. He won his only 500 early in his career, never won another one, but I just feel like someone like Scott Dixon, who's now had 5 poles, he's got 6 championships. He's got to win more than 1 500 in his career, and what better opportunity to have than what he's got today.
All right, my pick, I'm going with Ed Carpenter. Not that anyone cares who I'm picking, but I'm going with Ed Carpenter. 3 top 6 finishes in his last 4 Indy 500s, starting in row 2. You're talking about someone who knows this track well. Find me someone who knows this track better than Ed Carpenter does. That's why I think he's got a fast car. He's had success here, but he's still elusive. That win here would mean the world to him and his family. I know he says it's fine if someone from his team wins, but Ed Carpenter wants to win this race. So that's my pick, is Ed Carpenter.
Well, thank you all for joining us today for another rousing edition of Pit Pass Live. I want to give one final shout out before we close things up today. Our producer, the guy who lives at this track as much as I do during the month of May, Clark Wade. Clark made a trip yesterday evening to Louisville, Kentucky, because our equipment was malfunctioning. That was the only way we were going to be able to host this race show at the level that we do. We really appreciate everything that Clark does. He's behind the scenes. You don't get to see his face, but I tell you, he works incredibly hard to bring you this type of pre-race.
What time
race
was he
day
here
content.
this morning? 4 a.m.?
4 a.m.
4 a.m.
He's incredible. He's here before I was this morning, and we really appreciate you, Clark. So thank you, everyone who watched this show. We hope that you continue to follow us at IndyStar.com, follow us on Twitter throughout the race day. You know that we're going to have more stories than anyone does.
Yep, most comprehensive coverage you'll get from the Indy 500.
Both on the racetrack, the action off the racetrack, the photos from the snake pit, the photos of whoever wins this race. You know that's the best place you can go to get everything you need after this race is over with. Tonight, tomorrow, and the days beyond, IndyStar.com.